If you fell down yesterday, stand up today. H.G. Wells. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Podnuts Pro. I am your host, Marvin Bee. I am coming at you live from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where, of course, the weather is fantastic. My guest will agree it is right now 74 degrees with a real feel of 71. Podnuts Pro is the podcast for IT business support, where we share products, share stories, and talk about tips, all in an effort to help you run your business better, smarter, and faster. We're here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. My guest today, you will remember him from a while back. He is a podcast veteran. He lives here in the state of Florida, as I mentioned earlier. He is from CoreView, vice president of something, but Chief Evangelist is the best part of that title I like. Doug Hazelman is in the house. Doug, how are you?
I'm great. Great to be here, Marvin. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah, I forget. I know it was vice president of something, but I like Chief Evangelist is what I like best.
Yeah, I'm not really, there is no vice president of anything. It's just vice president and chief evangelist. So.
Oh, okay. I was trying to add to your title when I didn't need to.
No, nothing to add.
All right. So, South Florida is abuzz right now because in Miami-Dade, they just lifted the curfew that was imposed down here to keep people at home and not running about. And of course, Florida man, as you know, has been just not paying any bit of attention to any coronavirus restrictions. How is life over there in the Tampa area?
It's actually pretty good. We didn't have any curfews, even though, we still had the spring breakers here. I think over here, it's more the families visiting the grandparents than it is the college age 20-somethings partying their butts off. So
yeah, you don't have the crazies.
Yeah, we don't get the crazies quite as much as you guys do. But I think the spring breakers and the snowbirds are beginning their migration north. So that means it's going to quiet down here a little bit and begin my favorite time of the year in Florida, summer.
Yes, it is summer. That's right. Snowbirds, be gone.
Well, but come back. Just leave us alone for a while.
As soon as we open up all the parks, to full capacity, come on back, spend your money, and visit our hotels, because half of our income comes from the hotel taxes that you guys pay. So
yes.
All right. Well, Doug, before we get started too far, let's go ahead and do our segment that everybody has loved so far. And we are going to go in the news. So normally I start with a Florida man story, but tonight we are going to start with a tech story because all week people have been abuzz about the announcement by Enable, which is the rebranded SolarWinds MSP product, where they are going to be raising their prices 5% effective June 1st. And it has been quite interesting because the community has been in such an uproar. But let's not forget, they are not the only ones doing this. Synchro, just a few weeks ago, also announced a price increase. And I think a lot of others will be doing so as we come out of COVID in 2020 and companies try to regroup and recoup some money. And of course, they are adding features. SolarWinds talks about the fact that they've grown the MSP Institute. Their head nerds team has doubled to help you grow with investment in areas like automation and security. They now have more than 400 fully vetted scripts. So a lot of things happening there at Enable. My 2 cents, they still haven't pissed me off enough to leave, so I will be staying with Solar Winds. But now I have to get to a great news story. Someone from the land of Canada tried to rain on our parade by saying that they're out doing Florida Man, but I want to say the best part of Florida Man that people love is the gator stories. And we have a video to accompany tonight's news. Seeing alligators in Florida is a normal occurrence. However, seeing gators wrestle, not so much. So Gordon Silver of Lakewood Ranch, Florida, was shocked to find two large alligators getting to know each other right in his backyard. So, of course, he posted the video. These big dinosaurs are getting to know each other in a mating gesture in Lakewood Ranch. Doug, that's not far from you.
No, it's not. Just a little bit south.
So according to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, alligator mating season begins in early April with courtship, while actually mating occurs in May or June. So in 2020s, officials warned of aggressive alligators during this time of year. While they fall in love, they may not be so affectionate. So ladies and gentlemen, it is gator mating season.
Great. You open up the episode with gator porn.
We got to get you in the mood. Oh, my. That is just fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So I assume you saw that video, or I'm assuming, right?
I don't think they showed that one on the local news here. That I didn't see it. There's so many Florida Man stories that it's hard to keep track.
Yeah, I get the attraction to filming a gator when they're that close. I don't know that I would watch them do that.
If I had a really nice telephoto lens and I was a couple hundred yards away, yeah, I might film it. But I'm not getting up there with my phone that close.
That is true. All right, so that was for Chad. He loves gator stories in Florida. So, and Doug, we've actually had a question in the chat. Somebody has asked, where do you live? Because the person that is asking, John, is also on your side of the state.
Okay, so I am in Tampa Bay, near St. Petersburg, in a small town called Gulfport. So, in Pinellas County, it's the southern part of Pinellas County, here in Florida. But Gulfport, Florida, cute little community here that we fell in love with many years ago when we first moved to St. Pete and decided to build a house here, and been living here for almost a year now.
That's one of those quiet areas in the Tampa Bay area. If you, am I correct in thinking if you go over the Sky Bridge, if you're heading north, it's west of the Sky Bridge, kind of in that little area? Yeah.
So when you go over, you come over the Skyway, and then if you come in, you get off 75, it turns into 34th Street. That's basically, southern Pinellas, South St. Pete. And then you go up a little bit, you turn left to go west, and then Gulfport's a little community here on Boca Ciega Bay. A lot of fun, great little town.
Oh, so I told Doug earlier, we may have to have a little tech meetup over there. There's a lot of people hanging out in the west coast of Florida. Of course, a big retirement area. So all those snowbirds visiting their grandparents, well, a lot of techies are moving to Southwest and West Florida. So.
Well, and there's a lot of, job opportunities here too, especially in the MSP market and tech market. So you got tech data here, several others. So there's a lot of opportunity here.
Yes, there is. So speaking of opportunity, that is going to be the subject of tonight's show, managing Microsoft 365. And we joked earlier before the show in the green room that a lot of companies are offering 365, deploying 365, but very few of us are really managing 365. And CoreView is a company that is going to solve that issue for us and help you guys manage 365 at the core of the SaaS stack. So So
That's the
tell us,
idea.
all right. So tell us a little bit about, I guess let's start with, managing SaaS. Let's start with an overall picture because, most people think managing is just, well, if I can just, add users in bulk and make changes, that's all I need. But
Mhm.
management goes far beyond that, correct?
Correct. And it's when we talk about, there's SaaS in general, and then there's Microsoft 365, which of course is a SaaS offering, is software as a service from Microsoft. And what we focus on is we focus on 365. We do some things with other SaaS platforms as well, but mainly with 365. For companies with 365 at the center of their SaaS stack. And we think about it from an IT perspective. 365 is one of those SaaS application that spans the entire company, right? Everyone needs an account, a mailbox, a Teams, and and all this type of stuff. So, for IT, 365 does really become the central point for a lot of what you have to do. IT may not manage the Salesforce account, so that might go to sales ops or something like that. But 365 is definitely an area that IT focuses on. And when you get into larger deployments for 365, especially if you're distributed across multiple locations, maybe multiple countries, or even in public sector, if you have multiple departments within a state or within a county government, one of the issues becomes how do you manage it, not just from central IT perspective, but how do you give the people in those other locations or other departments the ability to do management as well. And if you look at what the way Microsoft has implemented 365 is, the recommendation is to go to a single tenant, because that makes everything work really well from a collaboration standpoint. Everything communicates well. It's easy to set up. If you have multiple tenants, then you've got to do all these connectors, and it's a real pain. So single tenant's the way to go. And if it's small tenant, that's not a problem. But when you've got 50,000 users spread out across 4 or 5 different countries, you want to give people in those other countries, those other areas, the ability to kind of manage what they should own on their own, similar to managing an Active Directory domain or within an organizational unit. 365 doesn't have OUs. 365 doesn't have multiple domains. They have tenants. And what we've come up with is the idea of what we call virtual tenants. So it's a way to segment your 365 tenant in a way such that I can give you access to manage a subset of the users and devices and those types of things, and only those. So that's the only visibility that you have when it comes to management. I can give somebody else access to another area. So I limit the kind of the scope of responsibility for these additional administrators by creating these virtual tenants and giving them control over their little estate, so to speak, in the 365 world.
Okay. So when you're talking about Microsoft as one tenant, most of us understand that if you go into the Microsoft portal, all the users are in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no breaking them up or any way. And
Yep.
as an MSP, if we're going back and forth between tenants, some of our partners that that help us resell 365, they may have a portal, and we may be able to switch between clients in their portal, but we still have the same issue once we get into the portal.
Mm-hmm.
And even there, we can't break them up. So CoreView is doing something, I guess, where you're saying you can actually create groups, kind of like an Active Directory,
Mm-hmm.
and delegate permissions for each of those groups.
It's more. It's actually closer to an OU, to an organizational unit.
Okay.
Because when organizational units, they divide up a domain structure, and you can give someone access to an OU to manage objects in that OU. That concept doesn't exist in 365. We call them virtual tenants. So virtual tenant is really more about visibility in terms of what you can see and what and what you have access to, instead of like it's less like a group and more like a view.
Okay. All right. And when you talk about visibility, what exactly is the visible side? I mean, because are we talking just the same type of stuff we can do where we modify users? Can you see alerts? Can you see the the protection area and all that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a number of different things, and You mentioned the admin console for 365. There's more than one, right?
Well, here's the thing. They're all separate because every time you go down to the center and click, it opens a new window, and it's almost like they're all separate.
Yeah, they are. There's about 15 of them. When you look at all of the services that 365 offers, right? There's one for Exchange. There's one for Teams. There's one for SharePoint. There's all these different admin centers, and what we do is we actually combine all those into a single interface. So we have information on Teams. We have information on Exchange. We have information on OneDrive. All that we pull all that information in. And we talk about alerts. We also pull all of the audit data from 365. So we store that as well. So you can see the different alerts. You can actually create actions on alerts and those types of things. Even trigger workflows to do automated tasks. So there's a whole lot of things that you can do once you've got everything kind of in the central consolidated location, and that's what we enable.
Okay. And you mentioned a key feature that I don't know how far we need to go into it, but you said you can do all of these things from that portal. So you don't have to go back to the admin center to do something. You can do all of it from within CoreView.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
So, and it's one of the things, when we talk to, when we kind of set out on this journey and we were talking with customers, and our founders come from a consulting practice where they focused on Microsoft. They saw this need for an easier way to manage 365. And so that's what they focused on. And we focus on a couple of different areas. One is visibility. So I said we pull all that information in, so we have a rich set of reports. And the nice thing about the reports is they're what we call action enabled. So you can pull up a list of users. You can create a filter, so you get just a subset of the users, and then you can form a management action on those users all right from within that report. So if you've got a list of there's a report of disabled users with licenses, right? They're disabled. They've been disabled for 30 days. They don't need a license. So those are the users that show up, and you can do license management, revoke all their licenses, and now you've just put all those licenses back in use for actual users who aren't disabled.
All right.
So that's the idea of see it, and then you can manage it, and then with workflow you can also automate these tasks as well.
Okay. We should probably state somewhere here in the beginning that a lot of this is really geared towards high use organizations. This was an enterprise product. So I don't want to mislead anybody by saying that if you're managing 3 or 4 small tenants in Office 365, this is for you. This is an enterprise product that is trickling down into MSP. Am I stating that correctly?
You are. It's just not there yet.
Right.
It's getting there. That's one of the areas we're working on, and I think as we go through this year, and we already have MSP customers, and there's a lot of focus for us this year on making some changes to our interface and in our setup operations to make it easier for an MSP and those types of things. So I think next year you'll probably see us talk a little bit more about use cases for managed service providers who manage multiple tenants. And again, it's we're still going to focus on that single interface. And you might have to switch between tenants for some things, but we also want to provide consolidated reporting across multiple tenants.
Okay. Well, that's good. I just wanted to make sure we got that point out there so that somebody didn't get upset at me later for steering them wrong. Yeah. All right. So visibility and administration, that's probably the core of what most of us would like. Mm-hmm. But a question actually came up that I think will go to our next point. Matt Foreman wrote, does this monitor security such as abnormal logins or impossible travel logins?
Yes, it does. So we have a whole series of reports in our audit section that focus on those. And the nice thing about the audit reports is they're essentially real time. So if a an event comes in, you can trigger a workflow as soon as, based on that matching event. And maybe it's to disable the account until you figure out what's going on with that account. So like on the impossible logins type scenario.
Okay. So when I was looking at this and I looked at some of the stuff, so of course the visibility was one, but the other thing that stuck out at me was this mitigating risk, because I think that's where, this question of security comes in. The big thing is I want to be alerted when certain things happen. And, 365 in the Microsoft portal comes with a few alerts already set up for you, and you can kind of create them. So how does CoreView help with mitigating risk?
So we're not virus protection, for one thing, because we in the past we've talked about security and everybody's like, oh wow, you're going to protect me from all these outside threats. Not necessarily. When we talk about mitigating risk, what we're talking about is understanding what's going on in your environment, so that you can take the proper corrective action if you need to. So again, I talk about the audit logs from 365. We collect all of those. We can do automated actions on those, but it's also about mitigating what people are allowed to do. So when we think about 365, there's this concept of global admins, and we go into companies all the time. We run a health check report for them, and they'll have 10, 12 global admins in their infrastructure. Microsoft recommends 4. For any size infrastructure, you should have no more than 4 global admins. Because that's a risk. So how do you mitigate that? You mitigate that by limiting what people are allowed to do, reducing the number of global admins on your tenant. And because we act essentially as a proxy into 365, you can take someone who's a global admin today, you can make them a global admin in CoreView, and they're just a regular person now in the 365 tenant. It's not about taking away their admin credentials, but it's about because they go into the CoreView interface to do their admin activities instead of going into one of the admin centers, as a super user global admin to do their work. Okay, and all of that's still logged in terms of who's doing what, but it's done on behalf of the CoreView service accounts that do that.
So what types of things can somebody do as a global admin in CoreView that they don't need the global admin rights in 365?
A lot of things like creating users,
okay,
which can be delegated, but again, when you look at roles in 365, roles are global. So if I can create users, then I can create users everywhere. If I can reset passwords, I can reset passwords for all the users. You give someone the help desk role, it's help desk over the entire tenant, not just a subset of users that they need to be help desk for.
I see. Okay, so you can actually make them a user just for their virtual tenant, or the OU, as we understand it, instead of over everybody.
Correct.
Okay.
And in Microsoft, it's somewhat impossible to do that just using the Microsoft native tools.
Okay. And somebody who would be allowed to, for instance, I know of one of my clients where we actually delegated somebody to be able to change passwords, but not be able to do anything else as a global administrator. Yes. So they were, I think it was the help desk group or something that we had to put them into for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, there are roles. So if you have central IT and a central help desk, okay, that's not necessarily that big of an issue. But when you start thinking about a couple of other things like PowerShell, right? PowerShell, love it. It works great. It's Microsoft scripting language. There's a lot of stuff you can do in 365 with PowerShell if you know what you're doing and if you have the permissions to do it. What we allow you to do is create either custom actions or build PowerShell scripts into workflows so that you can actually delegate the running of that to a lower level admin. So, provisioning users is one example. There's a whole lot of different areas where you can, people have developed scripts, but again, you have to be essentially a global admin in order to run scripts. With CoreView, you can create these custom actions or workflows, delegate that permission down to maybe a tier 1 tech, so that when there's a particular issue that's solved by this script, they can actually have the permission to run it without having to expose, and have them available to run scripts across your entire tenant.
Okay.
It's all done through CoreView. So
And you
we
said,
call it democratizing PowerShell in some
okay,
ways.
it's a good title there. And you said all of this is still in the audit trail, so we can always go
Yes.
back and see
Hmm.
who did what
Yes.
across any group. Okay,
Hmm.
interesting. All right, what's next?
So what is next? Mitigating risk. Another area that we talk about a lot is this idea of the audit trail, and sometimes when breaches happen, you don't know about it for several months because maybe they got in, they haven't activated yet. Now all of a sudden they activate. Now you got to figure out, okay, how did they get in? How did they do that? Like SolarWinds, right? The Solar Gate or whatever you want to call it, right? It was there for a while. Then
Yep.
it was like, oh, we discovered it. So now you got to like trace back and look at all your audit logs. By default, depending on your license type, Microsoft does not store those audit logs indefinitely. It can be as little as 3 months, or 1 month to 3 months that they store that data before it's gone. So we store it for a year by default. All those logs, we store those for a year by default. You can store them longer if you want. But what that gives you the ability to do is go in and do a forensic analysis to determine, okay, when did this happen? When did it occur? I know what, now that you know what you're looking for, you can actually go back and figure out maybe it was, was it a user that clicked a phishing link? Was it, something else? But because you have that audit trail, now you can actually go back and figure out how that person got in. Then you can fix that issue. If it was an issue, you can fix it. If it's not an issue, if it's just a stupid user, you can have a talk with that user. So.
Okay. Now, are these types of things that you would see from like a dashboard view, or do you need to go into the audit trail to find these things?
Well, it's all in a web interface. So it's just basically just a simple query. From a reporting perspective, you can choose a date range. You can say what you're looking for. Type in a string, whatever, and then you get a report in terms of what happened within that date range, or within that particular object. If you're looking for something that happened on Teams, you can filter it by Teams. If it's by for the users, all the different kind of services that are in 365. You can view across all of those.
Okay. Interesting. Now, one of the bugaboos with SaaS is backup
Yes.
and all of that stuff. I don't even know where to begin with that, because that's been the big crown jewel for everybody, was to be able to have SaaS backup. So, do you guys have backup built into CoreView? Okay,
Nope. No.
just had to ask.
No, I know. I know. It's in. It's a topic. I spent a lot of years in backup. Between Veeam and MSP 360. I lived backup for well over 10 years, and from a backup perspective, when it comes to SaaS, I always tell everybody you should back up your data because it's your data, right? It's not Microsoft's data. You're creating it. They're your emails. They're your files. Those types of things. So, and Microsoft does a best effort to protect it, but you never know what's going to happen. And backup is always a good idea, because it might be a lot easier for you to recover something from your backup than it would be to try to go through either Microsoft or whatever SaaS vendor to try to find the right version of that file, or a copy from when it was deleted, and those types of things. It's much easier probably use your backup provider's interface to do that. So I'm a big advocate of, even though it's SaaS, you still back it up.
Okay. All right. Didn't mean to take a left turn on you there, but it just for some reason popped in my head, and I'm like, I better ask this.
Yeah, like I said, I have a history in backup, so
You're the right person to ask then.
Yeah, 365 is a bit new for me, but I've been enjoying learning all about it.
All right. So that's right. You've been there since August?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, I know you came from the backup world and just, in dealing with just data in a pure sense, but so what's new that you had to learn in SaaS, and how's it shook your world?
Well, it's kind of funny. I equate it back to a company that I worked for back in, we'll say the 90s. late 90s, 2000s, Alligator software. And we were focused on helping customers manage and migrate NT, NT domains and Active Directory. So, Alita built this, this whole migration engine, and really what took off was the migration from NT to Active Directory, because it wasn't a straightforward migration. Yes, you could in-place, if you had a single domain, you could do an in-place upgrade, but most enterprises had multiple domains that they were all over the place, and you can't just upgrade that mess. They wanted to migrate to a fresh, clean directory space. Very similar to what's going on in 365 now, where there's migration companies and tools to help you migrate from on-prem to 365. So I could kind of equate my experience back to that, because that was managing Active Directory, it was migrating Active Directory and Exchange. Now I'm at CoreView, and we don't do a whole lot for on-prem. We have a hybrid connector to do affect change for on-prem Active Directory and Exchange, but really what we're doing is we're doing a lot of the same stuff in the cloud from a management perspective, and even the technologies, the concepts that we were doing in Active Directory before, are now kind of the same in 365. So while yes, I did spend the time in between in backup, it's kind of like I'm back home again now on the Microsoft world and focusing on identity and access management, infrastructure, but it's in the cloud instead of on-prem. So it really is a bit full circle for me from a technology perspective to be here at CoreView.
All right. Back on task. So I know we've kind of focused on just the 365 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you had mentioned that CoreView can help with other products. So why don't we get a tour of those other products that you work with?
Sure. So we have what we call we have a connector or an add-on for multi SaaS, and what that allows you to do is a couple of things. One is go out and discover all of the different SaaS applications that are in use within the enterprise. It's extremely important for finance and procurement to see, hey, what's everybody using out there and how much are we paying for it? So we can discover all of that financial information from a licensing and invoicing and all that kind of stuff. We can do some light management on Google Workspace, formerly G Suite, but we can plug into. It's kind of we can get information from hundreds of SaaS applications. We have deep integration with about 30. Or deeper integration with about 30, where we actually can pull and do a little bit of two-way communication sync. And then the other thing is, once you've connected those other SaaS applications, then our workflows can then go and affect across those different SaaS platforms. So where's that important? Again, I'm going to talk about provisioning and deprovisioning. You have a workflow to create a user. Not only does it create their 365 account, maybe creates their on-prem account, creates their OneDrive, creates and provisions their OneDrive, mailbox, all this type of stuff, adds them to the right groups. Can also go out and, depending on what department they're in, add their accounts to these other SaaS applications as well. So it can create an account for them in Salesforce. It can create an account for them in Box or whatever other SaaS applications that you're using that we support. And that becomes important because now I can just click a workflow, boom, they're fully provisioned. And it's also extremely important from a deprovisioning perspective, so that when the employee leaves, you have a workflow that does the reverse. It not only deprovisions their 365 account, but also across all the different SaaS apps that you've plugged them into to make sure that they're fully removed from the organization.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. But in terms of license management, let me ask this, because a lot of the platforms, yes, you can provision and deprovision people, but the license management still has to be done either in the Microsoft portal or AppRiver or wherever, Pax8 or wherever that's done. So are you guys able to do the license provisioning in terms of adding and removing actual licenses?
You still have to purchase them, but once they've been added to your tenant, then we can manage them fully. So if I want to bump you from an E3 to an E5, as long as I have them available in my tenant, I can do that through CoreView. We show you all the licenses that you have, and allow you to then, assign them. So we do full license assignment and unassignment and provisioning, deprovisioning through that. And that's where I talk about, the fact that the licensing, when people first deploy CoreView, the first place they go is license optimization. To get a really good view of, okay, we've bought all these licenses, how are they being used, right? And we can actually show how users are using not just the license, but the individual services granted to those licenses to say, okay, they've got an E5, but they're only using they're using email and Teams, and that's it. Right? Why do they have an E5? Well, there might be other reasons they have an E5, security and those types of things, but maybe you can bump them down to a lower tier license, or the other area is, I mentioned disabled accounts with licenses. There's a lot of times people end up with multiple licenses assigned. It can really be a mess, and licensing is one area where people jump to very quickly. The other area, which is similar to virtual tenants, is what we call license pools. And when you have an organization, especially, I bring up public sector a lot, especially government, whether it's state, local, they have departments. The departments want to be autonomous from each other from an IT perspective, but they all have to chip in from their budgets for these licenses. So they purchase everything centrally, and then okay, so Parks and Rec has this many licenses assigned, police has this many, fire has this many. How do we, there's no way within Microsoft to say these are the licenses that you get, and no more, no less. With license pools, you actually assign those licenses out, and then you assign license administrators within those pools that can then go in and do assignments just for those users. So licensing now, it's down to the department level or location for them to manage the licenses.
Okay.
So probably way more than you wanted to know about licenses, but
it sounds fantastic, because I was going to ask you to explain more of the optimization. So when people run this, I'm assuming it's a wizard or something that goes out and queries and stuff. Does it actually recommend what license a user should have based on what they're using, or do you have to? Okay.
We haven't gotten to that stage. There's no AI license assignment built into it. Machine learning. No, we don't. None of that. But just from a reporting perspective, because licensing is not something that is you need to monitor it every minute of every day.
Right.
Right. It's something. Maybe it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, however often you want to do it. But to be able to go in and say, we've purchased these licenses. Are we using them effectively, right? That's the return on investment. And, it might be that you see, hey, we purchased this one level of license and it's not enough, right? So we need to bump up to, from an E3 to an E5, or, however, whatever type of licensing that, that is needed. Maybe it's determined, hey, you need to bump up, or again, maybe based on what's services used and those types of things, maybe it's bump the licenses down. So having that visibility is one of the key aspects. And if you look at from a Microsoft perspective, when you just use the native tools to try to figure out licensing, I mean, we have customers that have written scripts that, in an environment with 70,000 users, it takes the script 3 days to run because of how Microsoft limits PowerShell from the customer perspective.
Right.
And then they've got this dump of file. Now they've got to basically put that into Excel or some other analytic software, and do some pivot charts and all this kind of fun stuff to try to figure out what all this data is. We do that for you all automatically, within the report. So you can, what used to take 3 days to run, just to report, and then another 2 days to compile. So maybe that's 5 days. You can do it in 5 minutes.
That would be fantastic, because I know I've got customers that if they have one license that's not being used, it's like, get it out of there. I don't, $21.95 I'm wasting.
Enterprise customers it's typically more like $300 I'm wasting on
I was going to say,
yeah.
30 E3 licenses not used. It's $600 right there.
Yeah.
So that adds up. All right. So let's do a quick switch. Was there any other features that you wanted to mention real quick?
Like I said, That's what
Okay.
CoreView does.
All right. Because I wanted to get over to Teams in particular, because you said there was some great stuff coming up
love
with Teams.
love Teams. I'm on Teams all day long.
So I have Teams. It is open sometimes, but it's not open all the time.
Yeah, I am probably on Teams if I worked an 8-hour workday, which I rarely do. It's more. I'm probably on Teams 6 hours out of those 8 hours.
Okay.
It's what we use. It's become central to how we do business, and I think because of work from home and everything that happened last year, a lot of companies have made that switch as well. For some it's Zoom, right? Depending on whatever collaboration software, conference calling software you want to use. For us, it's Teams, and for a lot of our large enterprise customers, they've standardized on Teams as well. And when you do that, you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of Teams. And a couple of things happen within Teams. One is all of a sudden, all these teams start proliferating, right? So you've got all these teams, and are they still being used? Or were they created for a project and then they've been abandoned for the last 6 months? How do you clean? How do you go in and look at that and clean that up? Do you have teams without owners? There's a whole slew of Teams management now that has kind of come up and taken grip on us because we're using it so much that it's we sometimes have to go in and clean up the mess,
Right.
so to speak. And that's just one aspect.
Well, that's a good thing because I know a lot of my customers, jumped on the Microsoft free Teams, app so that because they didn't want to purchase Zoom.
Yep.
But they used, Teams for a while and then stopped using it. A lot of it because people are going back to work and not needing it as much. And some of them did use the messaging feature, where you can do the conversations in there.
Mm-hmm.
But that was it. I mean,
yeah.
So it's something where I got it so that I could communicate with some of my peers and do some other stuff. But it is something that I want to look at. So,
and there's, I'm not here to try to sell Teams. I'm just, like I said, it's what we use and it's what a lot of our customers use. But there's also this level of, okay, we standardize on Teams. What if we look at usage and all of a sudden we see that everyone in the company is using Teams except marketing? Why is that? Well, it's because marketing is using Slack, right? instead of Teams. Someone's probably paying for that Slack. Do we want to really pay for 2 different collaboration software? So let's work with marketing to get them to use get them over to using Teams and having less reliance on another platform that is probably costing us money which is not standard. That's just kind of one example of how you can look at that usage data. Another area, and I don't know if you have customers that have bought into Teams telephony and Microsoft calling plans and those types of things. When you talk about pricey, that's where the price tag starts going up even higher. But Teams can be your entire PBX, and there's companies that are utilizing it because guess what? Teams is central to all their employees' universe. And how do you now track those calling plans? Right? You've got phone numbers to dole out. You've got devices to manage. There's Teams rooms. There's Teams phones. Teams phone numbers to assign, all those types of things that now just add another level of complexity. But again, within a single interface, you can dole all that out. You can even assign. You can have phone numbers in virtual tenants. So all phone numbers that start with 727, which is Pinellas County, Florida. They get in the Florida Pinellas County virtual tenant, and the admin. You can create a Teams admin then that can assign phone numbers, but only those phone numbers because they're in that pool to the devices within that geography. So a lot of fun stuff you can do there.
All right. So are you guys using Teams with the telephony features?
We are not. We do
Okay.
like when we do calls, we do Teams to Teams.
Okay.
But if I kind of talk about it, if you've got a help desk or a call center, you could, in theory, have everyone using Teams as the telephony solution, connected into either a Microsoft call plan or a cloud call plan. And even at Ignite, they announced a whole bunch of a whole new slew of features in terms of what they're doing for calling. It's with the public switch telephone network, PSTN, new connectors. So if you look at where some of the development is going in for Microsoft and Teams, it's going in on the telephony side, because why should you have a PBX? We've been doing it already, and I know a lot of MSPs do that already. With cloud phone providers, with soft phones and those types of things. Teams is Microsoft is wanting to use Teams to replace all that.
Well, the calling plans, because I did look at those before, and I know that the pricing seems okay if you want to stay on the small domestic side.
Mm-hmm.
What was it, $8 or $12 for those plans? So wasn't too bad.
Yeah, some are more than others.
Let's see here.
But I mean, Microsoft, they have auto attendance built into Teams. So you call a number, press 1, press 2, press 3. You've got that. They've got call queues, so you can manage. You can see where everything's at in the call queue. They've done a lot. They've done a lot of work on telephony on Teams.
All right, and I'm assuming that the number applies to the account and not to a device, right? You can actually assign it to multiple devices.
Well, it depends, right? So as a user, you can assign a number to a user.
Okay.
And I can use that on multiple devices, right? It'll work on my phone. It'll, my mobile phone with Teams installed. It'll work on my computer. So that's that aspect. But there are also Teams devices, right? Like IP phones that can be assigned a number in Teams. So okay. In that sense, it's an actual telephone with a receiver that's been assigned a number. Teams rooms, like a conference room, can be assigned a number. So there's a whole slew of different things. If you look on Microsoft's site, when you look at devices for Teams, there's speaker phones, there's IP phones, headsets, all sorts of fun stuff that you can use with Teams and assign numbers from a device perspective as well.
Okay. I'm not ready for that. But I guess we need to be.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know from a pricing perspective, because I hear, I think almost, a lot of MSPs, when I was in the MSP space, there's a lot going on in terms of cloud calling, and setting, customers up with cloud calling plans and having it ring through and auto attendance and those types of things. So I know that's, I don't know how many MSPs are setting up their customers to do all that through Teams, though.
I think I've only seen 1 or 2 people ask about it. I don't know anybody technically that's doing it.
Yeah.
There might be somebody in the chat that can hop on the show when we do. We are going to stay for a post show, folks. So anybody that is watching live, you can jump into the conversation and we can get a little deeper in that. If you're listening to the audio after the fact, if you go to the podnutspro.com website, you can find this video and listen to the post show there. The post show will not continue on audio. So, all right. So is there anything in particular with Teams that you love that,
users and all those types of things? So when you look at it from a Microsoft perspective, Teams is very central to what Microsoft wants to do moving forward. Well,
I'm sure, I don't know if you even remember what those numbers were, but I'm sure it had to quadruple or something like that.
Yeah, it's a crazy spike. It's one of those line graphs that April last year just goes straight up. So because and they did it. They made it free and those types of things. But when you look at it from an enterprise perspective, they have something like 20,000 enterprise organizations that have more than 10,000 Teams users. It's some crazy number like that. I forget the exact stat, but there are a lot of companies using Teams.
All right. So how much has CoreView put into managing Teams?
We've put quite a bit into it. We actually have an add-on. We call it Teams Advanced. And the Teams Advanced really focuses on deeper reporting on call quality, as well as looking at the telephony features, the PSTN and those types of things, so that if you are using those things, you can get deeper analysis of, who's using it, who's calling who, those types of things from a licensing perspective. And, one of the things that we were talking to a customer about, or a prospect about a couple of weeks ago, was creating a workflow that, essentially once a month would look at how many minutes each user used from the team's perspective, for calling. And if they didn't use, if they had an unlimited plan, but they only used so many minutes, to drop them down for the next month to a limited plans for so many minutes, because switching that license dynamically like that does give you some additional savings to be able to do that. So each month check and look at the usage and say, okay, these people didn't use unlimited, so let's move them down to a limited plan. These people hit the threshold. You can hit the threshold and still use it, but you just pay more. And these people hit the threshold, so move them up, so you can kind of keep a balance in terms of what you're doing from a licensing, from a telephony perspective. So it gets a little complex, but it's a pretty cool capability.
All right. Well, Doug, let me say this: when CoreView hits MSP land full stream, I want you to come back. And I think I want to start doing some sort of hybrid demo where we can kind of see a dashboard and
Sure.
how this will work for us, because this all sounds like we need to be getting ready for this, if not jumping on CoreView.
Yeah, and like I said, I've been pushing for MSP since I've gotten here, and it's something that we're definitely is in our sights. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. But of course, you can go ahead and look at this, and coreview.com/partners. If you think you want to go ahead and take a look at it now, go ahead and go there and inquire about the Core Partner Program and become a Core Partner today. Let's see here. Oh, I was just scrolling down to the resources page. The ultimate guide to cutting SaaS costs. That should be good. It's definitely that management of the licenses that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's asking for my name and phone number. I'll do that later.
Yeah, we got to add you to our mailing list.
Yep. All right, folks. Doug Hazelman, Vice President and Chief Evangelist at CoreView. Again, the website, coreview.com/partners, or just coreview.com if you want to go browse through the entire site there. We will be keeping an eye on this because we definitely all need to get better at managing our 365 tenants. So, sweet. All right. So, Doug, before we end off the show, we come to the part that some guests are afraid of. And you heard my Florida man story earlier. You are a Florida man yourself.
Yes.
So this is the part of the show where we Florida man or random question. So do you have a Florida man story that you'd like to challenge with, or would you rather answer a random question?
Well, I mean, there's so many Florida man stories. I wouldn't even know where to begin. But have you read the book?
So no, I've not read the book, and I did start to watch the series. They started a series, the Florida Man stories, and the first 4 episodes were I was like wanting more. You
should read the book.
Okay.
Because he's the journalist who covered a lot of the stories. I forget the name of it, it's escaping me right now. But he's a journalist. I don't know if it's Tampa Bay Times, or what. But he wrote a book, and I actually read it, and it was
Mike Barron.
Is that what it is? That
Florida Man by Mike Barron. Is that the one? Because there's because there's multiple books. I think that's the most recent. There's Florida Man, the Epic Adult, and then Tom Cooper's Florida Man.
It might be Tom Cooper's. I'm trying to think.
And then there's one.
No, it's Tom Cooper's.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
it's Tom Cooper's Florida Man.
Okay, I will find that one.
I think. Oh wait.
That was the one just released.
No, that's not. No, that's not it. It's not.
That's not it. Because there's so many. There's a Florida Man, the Epic Adult Coloring Book. There's Dave Barry put out one called The Best State Ever. A Florida Man defends his homeland. And
I don't know if
figure that out.
I don't know if I find it, I will shoot it over to you. But
okay.
go ahead and ask me a random question. I'll do a truth or dare here or something.
The random question generator. And I'm going to have to put this up on the site so people can see.
Okay.
All right, here we go. This is horrible.
Oh, great.
What weird smell do you really enjoy? That's a horrible question.
It is. But I have always, since a kid, enjoyed the smell of gasoline. I don't know why. Gasoline.
Enjoyed it?
What? Not. I don't like huff it, but just the smell. I've always. I don't know, for whatever reason. The smell of gasoline is just something that.
Like the smell when you're standing beside your car filling your tank and the fumes pop up, or when you're pushing the gas-powered mower around the yard.
No, it's more when you're. It's more when you're filling your car up.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Call me weird. I love the smell of gasoline, right?
Oh, okay.
Nothing like the smell of napalm in the morning.
Yeah. Man. Thought it was going to be like, the smell of a sports gym after, a basketball game or something. I don't know. But hey, you answered. That was what we wanted. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for participating. And if you are watching live, stay with us through the end of the show here for the after the show party. And if you are listening to the audio and you want to get links, if we find the name of that book, the link will be in the show notes to whichever Florida Man book we find, as well as other websites. Other podcasts that you can listen to, previous shows that we've done. Remember, last month was all about marketing, and you can go back and listen to the marketing shows. And we've got a couple of good guests coming up. I'm not going to announce them yet because I don't want to jinx them. They're going to be good. And I don't think they're going to have as hard a question as Doug here tonight on the random question generator. But it should be good. So that's going to do it. On behalf of my good friend and Florida Man, Doug Hazelman, I want to thank you for downloading and listening and subscribing to the show. Tell all your friends. Come back next week. We'll be here Wednesdays at 8 p.m. And again, that's going to do it. And until next time, holla. And we're back.
All right.
So, good show. Good show.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Hopefully it didn't bore people too much talking about what we do for 365.
Now, I think we're going to get some people that'll email me and say, you should have asked them this, because I know, I mean, so my peer group, we talked about this a while back, and somebody wanted to get together and find a way to, well, what we were going to do is create a whole bunch of PowerShell scripts to help us manage 365 tenants. But the talk has always come up about multi-tenant management,
Mm-hmm.
especially being able to push out the same policies to multiple tenants. So from an MSP perspective, that would be awesome, especially if you could apply, some security policies. If you want everybody to have the same policies, at least as a baseline, that would be great. But what you're talking about in terms of being able to do the virtual tenants and the groups and, assigning, rights and privileges, that sounds awesome too.
Yeah.
Because actually, from an MSP perspective, you can actually do that from your own organization by, giving, tier one techs, enough, rights to do some stuff, but not make them a global admin. So fantastic.
Exactly.
All right. So if you are still with us, I know, let's see, Matt, if you're still with us, please let me know. I'm sure you have a couple of questions.
Are we watching the comments over here, or do they come into you separately?
No, the comments is there, but tonight was a tough night. I know some people were still reeling from the NCAA championship. A lot of people lost money with Gonzaga not being able. They couldn't even cover the spread. That was some game. Do you watch basketball?
Not really. It's I'm a college. It's college football.
Okay.
That's my sport. I found the book. It's not Florida Man specific.
Oh, okay.
It's called Oh Florida, Inside America's Strangest State and How It's Shaping the Country. Yes.
Like Craig Pittman?
Huh?
Craig Pittman, is that the author?
I think so. Yes. Have you read that book?
No.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Actually, never even heard of that book.
Yeah. I love it. Popped up on my Amazon. You should read this or what, but it's kind of funny. If people want to know why Florida is so strange, it's a good book.
All right. Well, I'm going to get a link and put it in the chat here, so anybody watching live can go ahead and grab it early. If you purchase it with that link, Podnuts Pro gets a tiny little bit commission to help support the show.
Nice.
Oh, except it didn't show up on Facebook.
Oh.
The Facebook. Oh, looks like it took that time.
But yeah, Craig Pittman, he covered Florida for Tampa Bay Times.
Okay.
So.
All right.
But he goes into a lot of stuff about Florida, even the shape of the Capitol building in Tallahassee. So.
Oh, really?
Yes. If you've ever seen it, it's an interesting shape.
I've seen it, but I didn't really think much about it. I was 18 and doing the college tour, so I didn't really care about the Capitol that much.
It depends on the angle, but it's essentially a tower in the middle with two domes on the side.
Yep.
So,
if you're a college student, you got that right away. Oh my.
Well, yeah, we started with gator porn, so why not, right?
Yep. Oh my goodness. I don't think I've ever asked you, Doug, how long have you lived here?
2012. So it'll be 9 years in July.
Okay.
So I'm not native yet, but I think 10 years to be a native Floridian, right?
I have no idea.
I don't either, but
I've been here since 76.
yeah, but grew up in Illinois, spent a significant amount of time in Ohio, 14 years in Columbus.
Really?
That's why, yeah, Ohio State football. It's like you asked me about sports, and college football is, like I said, Ohio State. You can't live in Columbus and not be an Ohio State fan. I did not go to Ohio State, but I love to see them do well. So
Yeah, I don't think you're allowed to live in Columbus unless you can recite the Buckeye.
yeah.
Yep. So the wife is from Ohio.
Oh, okay.
She is, let's see, north and east of you. She's south of Cleveland in near Kent area.
Canton, North Canton.
Yeah, it's east of there. It's a tiny little town called Rootstown, which is just south of Ravenna.
Yep, haven't been there.
East of Kent.
Okay.
So, yeah, small town area.
Yeah, I did a lot of. I used to have a motorcycle, and I did a lot of riding up in that area because it's nice and hilly and fun to ride up through there. So.
Oh my, John Reed. Okay, John, I should probably ask you: were you born here? That would make you a true Floridian. Of course, if he answers yes, we just gave away his age. Yep, there it is. Yep, yes. Okay. The answer is yes. Okay. Oh boy. All right. So, I know I didn't have a ton of questions on the CoreView because I obviously haven't dug into it. So, is there anything else that we maybe forgot to talk about, or did we?
No, I don't think so. I think we hit everything. And thanks for having me on. I know it's not necessarily. Hopefully, your audience is okay with having CoreView on, because we, like I said, we don't really have that MSP focus, but I think 365 is something that everyone's dealing with. So hopefully, we can. Hopefully, they'll appreciate that aspect.
Well, again, like I said, everybody's going to have to start looking at management platforms at some point, especially larger MSPs or, even an MSP like myself. Once you get to a certain level, you can't just manage everybody. I mean, I don't know. I think I've got 30 different clients, and that's my mailbox count. I don't even know what my mailbox count is, but it's in the thousands, and it's rough for me. I can't imagine having, tens of thousands. But I know there's some MSPs that are up there, and they're going to want to, be able to do that. They've got a, 500 to 1,000 clients, and who knows how many endpoints that's going to become a thing. So I wanted to at least get you on here, and even if it's ahead of the curve, you can be on their radar.
Yeah. Well, I've been pushing. So I've been pushing for, like I said, I think I said it on the show. I've been pushing us. I've been pushing to get us in the MSP space. But I know that there are features that we need to add to the platform before we can be taken seriously by MSPs. So but we have other priorities right now. So
right. Well, the big thing I think is going to be, first of all, a dashboard that is MSP friendly. That's probably the one thing.
Yeah.
And being able to switch back and forth easily between tenants, even within the CoreView site.
Yeah, it's not that difficult now. I mean, we have a drop down and you can change. But I think depending on, it's going to depend on how the MSP is set up, right? So if they don't want to switch tenants, like maybe, they have their own NOC, right? Or whatever they call it these days, operation center for the MSP, and they, customer calls in, they wouldn't have to necessarily switch their tenant. They can just type in the username, boom, they find them and be able to do it right there without having to switch. I think that would be nice.
Oh yeah, global search, that would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I just had a question that I was going to ask you in terms of the I'm assuming, since we all know this started with enterprise level. Wow, that's horrible. I just went blank.
Oh, and it's no different than I talked about my experience before Alita, we were enterprise there too, and it's because the bigger they are, the more complex and harder to manage it is, right? If it's small, just a couple hundred users, it's not that difficult using Microsoft's native interfaces.
Right.
But you've got a couple 100,000 users.
Okay, I think that was where so that was where I was going to go. So is there kind of a threshold where CoreView makes sense as opposed to, trying to start it, too low? Like, for instance, I don't think I'm at a level where I would be jumping into CoreView, but is there a magic number you think that, some MSP listening might be like, I've got, that number?
We typically, for our enterprise accounts, we look at 5,000 and above.
Okay.
Mailboxes. That's typically what we talk about. 5,000 and above is a sweet spot for us.
All right. I'm sure there's some MSPs listening that have that.
Yeah, and they have that in total. But again, talking about ramping on additional customers, we're working with an MSP now, and we have to train them up in order so that they can add their tenants into the portal and get them ramped up. That's why I said, there's just features that aren't there yet. So if they're willing to invest and do a lot of the work, we can work with them, but it's not like we have, an MSP central location on our website for MSPs and branding and all that fun stuff, and even features. So,
well, I'm sure that would be a whole different landscape to go down, because branding would be, I'm sure somebody's going to want it.
Well, it's not necessarily brand. Yeah, brand. Yeah, they would all want custom branding. They would all want to be able to give their customers a way to log in and manage. Do some self-management.
Right.
Because that's the thing. Hey, let them log in and reset Betsy's password. There's no harm in that, as long as they know exactly how they do it and they can't do anything else and they can't mess anything up. There's no harm in giving someone at the customer site a little bit of ability to do some things. Because guess what? It reduces your call volume. And that's why we look at virtual tenants. Is if central IT, they've got enough to do. If we can push some of the responsibility out to the edge, that's closer to the users, and do it in a safe way, then why not? Because then that frees up central IT to focus on more strategic initiatives,
right?
Things like that. So,
all right. That sounds fantastic. And John, you just put your age in the chat.
He doesn't seem to mind.
Nope, he doesn't. But early happy birthday there, Mr. Reed.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
All right. And I was just looking to see, I had started to look up some other stuff. Okay.
Oh, I should have mentioned that we're hiring too.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
What area?
You mean geography or department?
No, what department?
So we just sent it out today via Twitter, and I tweeted it, and several people have retweeted it. We're hiring for a pre-sales engineer, or pre-sales architect, sales engineer, SE. So
okay,
I think we've got one position in the U.S. and maybe one in Europe open.
Oh, how many locations you guys have?
Locations, offices, 2, one in Milan and one in Atlanta.
Okay.
But people, we have the largest concentrations of people we have in the U.S. are Atlanta and Boston area. But essentially everybody works from home.
Okay.
In Boston and everywhere else. We have, like I said, we have an office in Atlanta. No one's been there for the last year for obvious reasons. But then our office in Milan, that's where our development is located. That's where our co-founders are. They're based out of Milan. So product management, product development is done out of there. And then sales, we've got salespeople in France and England, Germany, all over the US. So.
All right. Well, at least you don't have to move.
No.
Especially since I built that nice house.
Yeah, yeah. Moving is not in the cards.
All right. So I was looking at your window there. So those look like some nice.
Wait, over here?
Yep.
Oh.
Those look like some nice. Are those PGT?
Uh-huh.
Ah.
Hurricane.
Yep.
So when and that was, when we were building, it was, because they don't have to do the hurricane. They can put in regular windows, but then they've got to put the mounts for all of the boards and everything. I was like, no, we don't want a house with all these nuts sticking out. We can just get the impact resistant and go that way. So
yeah, for people that are still watching, the PGT is a big company down here that does impact glass windows. So for those of us that like to have beautiful homes without the shutter look, that's what you would do, is get an impact window. So in the front of my house, we've got the two big windows are impact windows,
mm-hmm.
but every other window and all of our doors, we've got the accordion shutters.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our projects down the road is going to be get rid of those shutters and replace them with impact windows. So of course, PGT is at the top of the list, and we haven't figured out the doors yet.
So the other thing, hurricane preparedness in Florida, the other thing that we did, and I'm very happy we did, even though we haven't used it much yet, is the whole home generator. So
that's next summer for us.
We had to have natural gas run about 100 yards in order to get it, but it was like once we realized that natural gas was an option, then it was okay. We're getting a generator.
Okay, so we have a propane tank for our stove.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have to get a bigger one. We have to get a bigger tank to get the generator. But so when you say you had to get it run 100 feet, so did you actually get a propane tank or natural gas tank on your property that's 100 feet away from the house?
No, it's a natural gas line. So natural gas.
You're doing the gas line. Okay.
Yeah. So there was natural gas on the street. It just wasn't to the property.
Oh, okay.
So we had it brought to the property. Like I said, it costs a little extra, but now we have a gas water heater. We've got a gas generator, and we've got a gas grill hooked directly into it as well. So we never have to buy propane for the grill.
There you go. Sweet. Wow, that must have been some project.
Oh, like I said, it was a buy a lot, build a house. So it was quite the experience.
Now, did you do all of that at the same time? Like, did you just decide to go ahead and do it all together? You get the generator when you got the house?
Yeah. So like I said, we were in, we were designed, we just did the design, and then we were thinking about, we weren't going to do a generator. And then we were talking about natural gas, and they realized, our builder, talked to the city and whoever, realized that it wasn't that far away. We could have natural gas run here. Then it was okay. Now we're definitely getting a generator if we have natural gas, because we didn't think it was going to be possible, because we didn't think we'd get natural gas here. But then realized, hey, it's not that far away. It did cost us extra to have it run, but yeah, that was so. It was as the house was being built, generator gets delivered. It's massive. It's heavy. It got dropped in the garage, and 4 guys had to move it outside. So.
Oh wow! Now, did you go Generac or somebody else?
No, it's Generac, but it's only so it runs every 2 weeks. They call it exercising, so it runs for 10 minutes just to make sure it's working. But there's only been so far one time that actually ran because the power was out, and it was in the middle of the night, so it wasn't that big of a deal. We were asleep. So I wake up and I'm like, what's that noise? Oh, that's the generator. Oh, power's out. Oh. So the entire street's dark, but our house is lit up. So
nice. Now, I know one of the debates, well, not debate. The wife is going to let me make all the decisions on this by myself, I think. Sizing. Now, did you truly do the whole house generator to do everything? Because I know a lot of people only will do the major stuff.
Yeah.
So you did the whole house. Nice.
Yeah, because when it's going in when you're building it, you don't have to worry about how do I do which circuits and those types of things. It's you just build it in line and in everything, and you don't have to. It's much easier.
Right.
The other thing we did, and that was my decision, was wired the whole house. So I've got I don't use Wi-Fi on my computer. I've got it plugged in, going into a little server room, so to speak, and from there going out to the internet. But we've got the whole house is wired, which is nice.
So when we moved into our place, I actually had to have a guy come in and do partial wiring for us. So we've got two of the bedrooms, and then we've got a cable going out to the garage, because when we moved in, I actually downsized the business to work out of the house for what we thought would be a short time. Ended up being 2 years. And I had a bench out in the garage where I had internet out there. So,
yeah.
And that was fun.
Yep. So, cool.
All right. Well, Doug, thank you for hanging out.
Thank you for having me. Like I said, I know it's not your typical topic, but I really appreciate you having me on.
No, it's a topic. You saw the questions that came in, and people will be interested.
Cool.
Like I said, once we get rolling on an MSP version, you let me know, and
I will.
We'll get you back on for sure.
And what do you publish? Like 2 days later? Or?
This may be published tonight.
Okay. Yeah, just let me know.
All right.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. We're going to get on out of here. So, talk to you later.